Welcome back to A Lifetime of Mafia Tales. Today, Sal and I talk about the 10th Mafia hitman that he was close to, Roy DeMeo. This is part 2. Last week we did part 1, but now we're going to continue on with this part 2. Roy was a made man in the Gambino crime family. Roy was underneath a capo by the name of Anthony Gaggi. When Roy was on the street, his main boss was Paul Castellano, and of course you can say Paul didn't like Roy. Sal did do some criminal business with Roy, and we talk about what that was in today's video. Sal and I also talk about the perspective of Roy DeMeo from his son Albert DeMeo's book. Albert wrote a whole book about his father Roy. The name of the book is called Sins of the Father. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this. Also, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon if you want to get an exclusive story about Roy DeMeo and a lot of other guys that we do over there. And without further ado, let's get into Roy DeMeo. Good morning, Sal. How you doing?
Good, pretty good.
Yeah, well, we're going to do part 2 on Roy DeMeo today. We did part 1 last week, so we're really going to go into the whole family perspective side of things. His son, Albert DeMeo, wrote a book, I believe, called Sins of the Father. And then, he detailed out his father's life in the Mafia and what effect it had on him. And Roy kind of grooming his son to be in that life. He had him do certain crimes and stuff, and then you wrote a book as well, so I think you can really give a good perspective on what effect.
I didn't know that he tried to groom him for that life.
Well, he was getting him involved with loan sharking and kind of taking over some of the operations, because Roy would eventually go into hiding after killing that Colombian, or he thought it was the Colombian. He was with the Colombians, but it was an innocent college kid. And so we'll get into that, but I just kind of wanted to give a background on that. But are you familiar with that story with the Albert DeMeo and his father?
I read a little bit of it, about what he wrote. I didn't know he had any involvement, with his father and crime. I knew nothing about that because I didn't read all these books. I didn't have an interest. Once I left the life, it was behind me.
Right.
I did hear little things and read little blurbs, but I didn't talk to law enforcement about my past. I didn't. That's just what I didn't do. I went to Texas and started over and had a new name. And I thought I put it behind me. But there was such an enormous interest in the 1970s and 80s. By the time Gotti took over the Gambino family, the press was explosive. Everything was happening back then. Everybody wanted to know. Plus, we had the internet coming on in the late 80s, and that made everything easy to pay attention to what was going on. I wasn't interested, but it was right there in your face.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Everything that's coming up, because you were one of the first, I suppose, to cooperate back then. Not the first, but you're one of the first, I suppose. And you just seen all this history go in front of your eyes, I suppose, in the news as who flipped, who wrote a book, and this and that.
Yeah.
And Albert was one of them. And I guess from your side of things, you can. Roy was different from you, I would say, because he brought his son into that life and groomed him, and he had it more around him. And I guess, he would say in the book, his father bought him a gun at an early age. He would teach him how to shoot, and he would also show him. He would one time in the Gemini Lounge, Roy had his son Albert in there with him, and then they had a fake robbery. Like, they pretend that Roy had his friends or whoever, his crew, go in there and, just go in there and pretend like they're going to rob the place. And then Albert had a gun next to him. He's a kid. And so the gun was unloaded, but he didn't know that. So the guys came in and, they were starting to pretend like they were robbing the place, pointing guns at people. So then Albert got the gun and he pointed it at the people and shot, but it was nothing in there. And his dad told him he passed the test, you know what I mean? So they're,
I never knew any of this. In contrast, when we, the family, my first family, left New York City in 1985, early 85, I testified against the judge in '86 and against Gotti in '86. But in '85, we got to Texas, and our lives were completely different. Really, we never talked about the previous life. We never acted out. The kids were in high school. They were athletes. And I mean, my whole focus was get them through high school, get them to college. And that's what we did. So the kids did talk about some of the things that they remembered when they were 10 or 12. You know, a lot of the things that they related to what I do with my kids was I got them deeply involved in football when they were, you know, young kids, 12, 13. Recently, I've talked about a script that I wrote in 1992, and it was all about the kids playing football, and the Pop Warner Field was loaded with gangsters. I mean, it was pretty amazing. I don't know what Albert DeMeo, how he grew up. Did he play sports? Did his father want him involved? I don't know. But for my kids, they were young kids. My kids were like, say, 13 and 10 when we were still in New York City. And the thing that they had going on for them, they raced go-karts and they played football. So that pretty much consumed the whole year. We'd start racing go-karts in April and finish in August. Then we played football from August to December. So that was our focus. And my guys were really committed to excellence when they raced karts and when they played football. And one of the things I did teach the kids was never cheat. Don't cheat. I didn't allow them to do any kind of cheating. It went so far as when my son Joe was 18 years old, he went to University of Texas, and it was like 1989, 90, and guys were pumping steroids in their bodies, and he disagreed with that vehemently. I mean, eventually he left college and quit playing football because the whole focus in the 1989, 1990s, early 90s was how big and how strong you could get by taking steroids. So my kid's life was completely different. I don't know what the other mob guys did.
Well, in Roy's case, you know, out with Albert, Albert was, you know, introduced to like, you know, that Anthony Gaggy. Remember
Oh
we talked about
yeah,
him, you
yeah,
know, at an early age. A lot of the wise guys he got to meet, and also he recalled being, like I said, you know, in the part one, Roy grew up around, you know, Joe Profaci's sister, I think it was. So Albert recalls that. And then, you know, one time he was watching a movie and he had a cousin over and they had the Valachi papers on. And he's like, hey, that's Miss Profaci's, you know, brother. Did you know that? And he's like, just kind of weirded out, you know, like, really? That's weird. But like, he would have cousins come over and they would look at Roy, like, one in particular, he said, would always stare at Roy like with eyes like he knew what he was up to, what he was doing. And you know, Albert, he had no clue, he had no idea of that until a little bit, you know, later. And but for him growing up, I don't recall him detailing being involved with sports or anything like that. It was just being with his dad, you know what I mean, helping his dad out, like with,
yeah,
not crimes in the beginning, but like
right,
just father son kind of things. And he talked about Roy's personality with
yeah,
like even killing animals. Like, you know, Albert said that his father seen him kill a squirrel one time that had rabies, or, you know,
yeah.
that had rabies, and just freaked out and stuff. You know, I mean, he was like kind of protective to these little creatures, is what he would say.
You know, as a father, I did learn. I guess it was maybe about 10 years ago. I did this Inside the American Mafia documentary, and it was National Geographic. And the producers put myself and Michael Franzese in a limousine, took us around. We did New York, we did promotion in Boston, then we went to Philadelphia. We spent a couple of days there, and on the trip, I talked to Michael Franzese about his son. By the way, his son was a great baseball player, wound up playing in the Mets organization. And
Damn.
so Michael shared that with me, and I talked about my kids playing football in college and getting a degree. So I think Michael Franzese and I were completely different than most of the other fathers. And as we talked about fathers and sons, um, there was some mention that I think it was the Chin, Vincent Gigante, heard that John Gotti Jr. had been made. And I heard through FBI agents that he said, I was sorry to hear that. Gigante said he didn't want his kids either in the life. So for Albert DeMeo, I don't know where Roy, had a vision, what type of vision he had for his kid, but I guess it really affected him deeply. Of course, with his father accidentally killing someone once, and all the murders he did do, the kid had to wig out. I mean, really,
Um,
And I always told my kids, look, you can rest assured. Yes, I did lots of robberies. I dealt drugs, but I had a sort of a line. I was never going to murder anybody. Oh yeah, I would fight every week, beat people up and all, right in front of the whole Gotti crew. I tore apart a former hitman, but I had a line. I wasn't going to kill anybody. Now for DeMeo, maybe he didn't have that line. Maybe everything melted together.
yeah, and I think in the beginning, I don't think he really did want to bring his son in, but I think he was kind of more, he felt forced as when he had to go into hiding after killing that innocent guy that they thought was a Colombian drug dealer. And that's when he started to have him do the operations and take care of his mother, and also just be kind of just be the man of the house, really. And I took some notes on that as well. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there was certain people, not mob guys, just people, parents that so involved in what they're doing, whether it's legal or illegal. It could be sports, it could be entertainment. They get so wrapped up in what they're doing, they sort of draw their kids in, either A, to support them, or B, to brag about something they're doing. And in the case of crime, guys get together, they brag about their crimes. And it's sort of like a manly thing to have your son involved in your criminal activities. The new book that I'm writing with Steve Dougherty, co-author that wrote Sinatra Club, he dug in and found all kinds of fathers who got their kids killed. I mean, I can name them off in a minute. Jimmy Burke got his kid Frankie Burke killed. I mean, Mark Ryder, a good friend of mine, he's doing life in prison for heroin dealing. He got caught up with Gene Gotti. He got his kid killed. He turned over a junk business, a heroin business to his kid, and he got killed. All kinds of guys got their kids killed because they sucked them into the life. And I'm sure with Albert DeMeo, he didn't know what to do. I mean, what really does a son want to do? He wants to please his father, whether it's through sports, business, and as far as even crime. So
Yeah,
I can understand Albert DeMeo's dilemma supporting his dad and being involved in crime.
yeah, it would really be that, because I mean, when you grow up and that's what you see and that's what you know, and I mean, it's like that's if your dad's doing it, it's okay, right? I mean, your parents
Right,
doing it's supposed to be okay, you think, and
right,
in
exactly.
reality, you come to find out later that it's not. And
Hmm.
so, Albert, and that brings up another thing. Albert would lie about his father's job at school. He would tell the school, well, let's see, he said, yeah, I mean, he would just lie. I mean, I guess he didn't have a particular thing that he put in the book, but he'd just lie about it. But he went to the library and he couldn't figure it out. So I think he kind of maybe found articles and stuff that were made about his father and stuff. But I mean, where there wasn't a whole lot on Roy. He wasn't arrested until like 25 years of being in the mafia. But his aunts asked him one time, Albert, what did he want to be when he got older? And he said he wanted to be like his dad, and that just really rubbed them the wrong way. Him and his mother,
Yeah,
and just kind of they were
yeah.
scared. They didn't want to hear that.
I mean, we see it all the time. You can go into any professional sports, you'll find a lot of guys that were great baseball players. Their kids followed them. In auto racing, their kids followed them. Richard Petty and I mean, in acting, Sutherland, he followed his dad. I mean, this is a common thing to follow your father into something that was successful. It had a lot of excitement involved in racing, sports, acting. And in the mob, it was much different because back in the 70s and 80s, people did look up to mobsters. I mean, it took the end of John Gotti when people started to realize that it wasn't a glamorous life. And even so today, vicariously, people listen to all this stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of podcasts on, and some people are right. Oh, I can never get enough of this and get enough of that. When in fact, everybody who listens to the podcast realize we're talking about illegal activities, and we're not benefiting anybody, but talking about how much money we stole or how much drugs we did. But in Albert DeMeo's case, it was sort of a trophy for his dad to bring home the money and have the fancy cars and all. But I'm sure after his father was murdered, he struggled psychologically, maybe still struggling.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know if he's still around because that's all I keep hearing is that he's not around no more. He's not alive. I don't know. It's just rumors, man. I really don't know if he's actually took himself out. I don't know. In his book,
Yeah.
he had attempted that, and I'll get into that here towards the end of the story. But I can't find him. But anytime I asked around, they said he's not around no more. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah. Well,
So,
who knows? Who really knows? I mean,
yeah.
it's a guilt. It's a guilt issue. You have to deal with the guilt. My kids were old enough, also young enough to get out and stay out. Yeah, they think back about it, but I I never painted a rosy picture for them in the life. And I got them out of New York City in '82, so they were young. My son Joe was 11. My oldest son was 13, 14, and they went to high school up there in upstate New York. And eventually we relocated to Texas with new names and all, and they went forward with their lives and got educated, got a degree. I don't know how many. I think Michael Franzese's son went to college, played college football, college baseball, and is a healthy member of society. I mean, I don't know about the other guys. I think the Chin son struggled. I think the Colombo sons struggled. I mean, his son, John Gotti Jr. went to jail for years. He followed his dad's footsteps.
Yeah, I know, and he went through 5 trials, John Gotti Jr., I believe, or something.
Right.
I think he ended up winning all of them, or something. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But like what I was saying too about Albert, when Roy started bringing him in, he would do little things, but I mean, he even taught him about changing tags, and that would be the VIN numbers, right, on the
Right.
cars and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, are you able to expand a little bit on how they
Yeah,
did that?
sure. Back in the, people just don't know what the auto business was like in the 70s. And there was guys that had vision in the 60s and 70s. One of them was a brilliant guy who became popular later on. It was Salvatore Ruggiero, which was Angelo Ruggiero's brother. He was one of the leaders in doing what we call tag jobs. I mean, you'd buy a car that was a, total insurance job for maybe $500,000. You'd go get a clone, the identical car, and put the tag on and sell it. Well, I was in that business. I knew plenty about that business. But in Roy DeMeo's case, I sold him stolen vehicles dismantled like a chop shop. I didn't know exactly what he was doing, but if he taught his kid that, you could do a tag job and you could have a fancy car for no money, absolutely the wrong thing to teach a kid because it had no value. I didn't read his book. Was all mention of what he learned in the car business with his dad?
There's more that he brought up. Not a whole lot, but it was more of like the loan sharking operations. Is that he took over and just collections really,
Yeah.
and
Well,
collecting envelopes.
what goes with loan sharking, you got to A, get the money, which comes from other crimes. B, you got to put the money, what we call out in the street, and loan it to people. Then if they don't pay, the guys who loan the money usually send somebody to beat the customer up. I mean, I had $50,000 in the street at one point, I guess in the 70s and 80s, and I never once threatened the guy. If anything, if he didn't pay his vig, his interest, I'd tell him that's okay, pay it next week. And eventually, I sold the business to another maid guy who became a maid member, a guy named Big Funzy Terracone. And I told the guy, I told Funzy, don't threaten, any of the customers, because a lot of these guys I had for years and years, and they were paying the interest. Occasionally, I just give them like a Christmas present. Okay, no interest this week. They all like me. When Funzy took over the Sherlock business, he threatened the guy badly. The guy went to the FBI. Funzy wound up getting 5 years for threatening a customer that I had for 15 years, a bus driver. I shook
Wow.
my head. I said, is it worth going to jail, for 5 or 10, 15 years because you threatened this guy, he didn't pay interest? So I'm sure in Roy DeMeo's case, he was doing every piece of crime he could get involved in. I mean, I'm sure he was loaning money. He was doing all kinds of tricks, killing people. I mean, and sooner or later, his son had to find out.
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't read that part about when they went and chased the guy down Long Island. They killed him, and they wound up killing the wrong person.
Yeah, and he was pretty tore up about that. Um, you know, what he had said was that his father would always. It was after the whole Colombian drug dealer, right? That's what happened. They one of the guys in Roy DeMeo's crew, they had killed someone within that crime organization, and so after that, Roy was told that there you need to be on the watch out because your family is in danger, everyone that you basically love, because these guys don't care. They're not worried about who they kill or who they take out. They want revenge. So
Right.
uh let's see. So Roy had Albert, his son, even carry around a gun and protect his sisters. They ended up packing their stuff and leaving the house. They went to a hotel for a couple weeks. Then Roy said they could come back home and find out Roy was reading the newspaper on the Mexican kid that he had, Colombian Mexican kid, I believe, whatever the race may have been. He found out that it was an innocent kid that was just selling things door to door. And Albert recalls Roy crying and going into his den. Paul Castellano was pretty pissed off about this. Uh, and so Roy was really tore up about it. So Paul wanted to kill Roy, and he knew. So Roy told his son Albert that he was going to have to go on the run, but he'd stay in touch and just have Albert check for bugs around the house or on phones, whatever it may have been. And he also showed him, where the money was, the bank account numbers. So Roy would also have his son visit him while they were in hiding, to continue to do that. And that's when Albert really took over on some of his father's operations.
Terrible. That's a terrible storyline. The way I did read a few lines about DeMeo put his watch in his ring, in his wallet, in his room or something, and went to a meeting and knew he was going to be killed.
Yeah. And that's,
Terrible, terrible way of life.
yeah, that was, towards the end of the book, he
Yeah,
talked about his father being taken out and stuff. And
yeah.
I was going to bring up too that, Roy actually in the book, his son Albert said that he had saved a guy's life. He saved a man named Freddie's life who was a race car driver.
Freddie
And you,
Denome or something. I read that. Yeah,
yeah, so about that, like the guy had gotten, I believe it was a racetrack, right? And so the guy crashed or something, and Roy jumped out there when the car was on fire and took him out of the car and carried him, and they got it on camera or something, I think too, didn't they?
I don't know, but I mean, even as bad as he was, as vicious a killer he was, there was a little scintilla of good inside him. I mean, when you think about it, everybody could be as good as you can imagine, but they have a little streak and they have a bad side. In Roy's case, he was a vicious killer, but maybe he had a sympathetic little side in his life. Maybe he decided to surrender his life, get killed. Uh, Better. I don't know what went through the the guy's mind or the family's mind, but from what Albert DeMeo wrote, it was a terrible way to live his life.
Yeah, and when he realized his dad was in the mafia, you know, he seen him on the Carlo Gambino funeral. It was covered by the news, and so Roy was on there, on not talking or anything, but leaving the funeral. And they said that Carlo Gambino was like the godfather of New York and a big mafia figure, and
Right.
at that point he knew for sure his dad was in the mafia. And another thing too, he always recalled that his dad would always look at the newspaper, and the first thing he would look at was the obituary section. And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, there was a whole lot that went into
Yeah.
Roy and his son, but I'm trying to think of you know, like I said, he wasn't arrested though. I mean, for 25 years of being out on the street doing all these crimes and all that. I mean, he was the way that he did business with you is like you just one on one, right? He didn't let nobody
Yeah.
else know.
Yeah. I mean, he had several different types. It was reported he had several different types of illegal activities, drugs, illegal loan sharking, gambling operation, cars. I mean, and he didn't hesitate. Once he found out that I could supply him a lot of dismantled cars, I had 3 chop shops going. Uh, he would just tell me, "Okay, I'll take 5 at a time." I mean, I just had a couple of my guys load up these parts. I had 2 huge trucks, and eventually, when I got out of the business, I sold Roy DeMeo those trucks, those big
Yeah,
trucks that you could haul, cars in. And then, I had a couple of stores. I was buying gold. Then I built a real jewelry store. And Roy came in to one of my jewelry stores sometime, I believe it was late 79, because we had a gas shortage in 79, 80, maybe like that. And I had a bunch of people working in there, and he got a gift for somebody. I mean, I just gave him the gold chain. I go, "Hey, we did a lot of business. It's okay. Here, take it." So I was generous with some of the stuff that I had come across. By that time, I was completely out of the auto theft business, chop shops. Oh, I mean, I had a network of burglars, drug addicts bringing me gold and silver and coins every day. I mean, that's what I did. So I moved from one illegal business to another. Eventually, when I left New York City, I auctioned everything off, took all the money, and went upstate New York. I never did see DeMeo after that, after the 1980, oh, I guess it was 80, 81. I don't even know what year he got killed. I'm not sure whenever
yeah.
he get killed. So,
Well, yeah. Let's go into why he was killed and when that was. So I mean, from Albert's book, he said that Roy was being watched by the feds, and they knew that he was involved with running the car scam. At first, they thought it was the higher up guys that in the
right.
mob that were doing it, but it was actually him. So he eventually went on to be arrested, and this gave Paul Castellano more ammunition to say that he was a risk. So this is another reason why he was, almost on the verge to being killed, and he knew that. And Roy knew that he had to prepare his son to take care of his family. Roy did end up going to the meeting where he was called, and Albert said he never seen him again. The police came.
Well, yeah, I did read that the 2 young guys that he taught, all the criminal activities, this guy Tester and Center, they were young because they were born in 55, I think, those guys. So if they were hanging out with him in 75 to 80, 82, they were like in their 20s. He taught them all this stuff. And from what I read, I think Sammy the Bull said they both were the guys who killed Roy. I mean, maybe he didn't know it, but if the feds were watching him, the other families were watching him so they could kill him.
Yeah.
So he had 2 different groups watching him, and his life was down to a number of days.
Mm-hmm.
And they found him in the trunk of his car. A lot of guys were found in the trunk of the car. Back in the day in 70s, 80s, there was a reason why they left somebody in the trunk of the car.
Why?
It wasn't the same as killing somebody and then maybe disposing of their body, never to see the body. Remember, 99 and 44/100ths of murder cases, you've got to have the body. So the mob made sure bodies disappeared. They put them in the trunk of a car, took the car to a huge metal shredder and crushed it up into a little cube. But in Roy's case, I think they wanted to leave his body so people could see that he was dead.
Probably since there's all these cases and stuff going on, and I would imagine so, and especially for them, for say Paul was mad, they wanted to get a message across, and really show them. I mean, if you guys don't follow the rules or something, then this is what happens. Who really knows who was behind the whole thing? I mean, like you said, that it was. I think even Albert's book, he talked about those two guys doing it.
Yeah.
Joey and Anthony,
And the other thing was there was a recording made by, I'm not sure, one of the Gottis. It could have been Peter Gotti or Gene Gotti, talking to Angelo about John's reluctance to take the hit and kill DeMeo. And I think somebody said, "Oh, this guy's killed hundreds of people, hundreds of men. John only killed so many." So they passed the contract around to kill DeMeo. And eventually it was his own man. I mean, if you think about how glamorous and glorious the life of the mafia is, and how you have these best friends who you can trust and confide in, look who did kill him. The two guys that he taught about crime.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, maybe they were forced, like, look, you go kill DeMeo, or we're going to kill all three of you. I don't know.
That's probably could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Nino Gadji guy was a vicious guy himself. So if
all
you
of them.
read the book, he was involved in killing somebody on the run. I mean, openly with DeMeo. DeMeo got away, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of storylines there. I don't know what was written in Albert DeMeo's book, but the whole life was very sad, much like the Scarpa life or the Casso life. All these guys lived these terrible, violent ends of their life.
And it doesn't end well. And then especially on the family, they have to go through it.
Yeah.
Albert recalls the police coming to his house, and they said that Roy was shot 7 times and left in the back of a trunk. And
Right.
Albert himself went to identify Roy's body, and he said it was unrecognizable.
Terrible.
And that's just something that he had to go through. And then after the fact of his father was dead, Roy's crew still were messing with Albert because they wanted a book. They wanted information that Roy had kept of certain not crimes, but certain businesses to continue the operation.
Probably all the loans that he had out there. But if you think about it, the people that listen to these podcasts and make comments, I saw a comment one day. Oh, well, Tommy DeSimone couldn't hold a candle to Roy DeMeo's killing. I mean, they were both murderers. Doesn't matter if you murdered 3 guys or 33 guys.
Yeah.
So, and people think this is glamorous. There's nothing glamorous about being deeply entrenched in organized crime, and you can't get out. Once you get stuck in there, how do you get out?
Well, the key. Let's make a key message for people to get something away from this. I mean, it's really about being a father and having your son follow in your footsteps. So you have to lead by example. And Roy's, in his case, he did a lot of bad things, and so his son had to suffer from that effect. But for other people that are fathers and stuff out there, I mean, what do you think they can learn from this, from Roy and his son?
Well, I mean, be a good example. I mean, I would always tell my kids that don't pay attention to what I'm doing. I remember one time they caught me mixing drugs. I go, well, I'm going to do this for a while. You guys are never going to mix drugs. They saw me mixing drugs on a table in upstate New York when I had that racetrack. I went broke. I spent all the money I ever had building that track and didn't have enough. I went back to New York City, got busted for cocaine sales. And, that's the beginning of the end. It was like when I look back 40 years ago, it was the best thing that happened to me. And my kids managed to get through it. They went into the program. They didn't like the idea of the program. But the truth of the matter was it forced them to grow up. and it forced them, to make a commitment to something they were going to do in their life. And both my kids got, college education, so that was okay. I say to parents, be responsible for who you are and teach the kids the right things.
I think that's a good way to put it. There's no other way to really look at it, because just lead by example, and then they're going to follow you. I mean, whether they go on and do whatever else they want to do, that'd be great. We want better for all of our children. That's what we want.
I don't have any axe to grind with Sammy Gravano, but he got a new start in life, had a best-selling book, had a bunch of money, movies done about him. The government moved him off to Arizona, and what did he do? He got his kids involved in drug dealing, and then he went to jail for another 20 years. So I think he taught the kids the wrong thing, when in fact they could have did something legally and had a family type business that was legal. But again, this is what some people will do. They'll think that the life they're involved in is glamorous. Not glamorous.
Well, the key message is just lead by example and have your children do better than you. That's all we want. That's what we want to continue to do, man. So I think that covers this episode. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we appreciate it. And if you haven't seen part 1, go check it out, because this is part 2. And if you haven't seen our live, we did a live comparing Tommy DeSimone and Roy DeMeo, and that was a good one that we did. So this is our 3rd video we've done on Roy. So thank you again, everyone. And Sal, you got any final words?
Yeah, it's like Spike Lee said, do the right thing.
Man. That's all you do. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
That wraps up the 10th Mafia Hitman, Roy DeMeo. This was part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, please go to the video description and you'll find that there. Roy is another example of someone who got wrapped up in the criminal life, and it absolutely consumed him whole. He had a very horrible ending to his life as well. Please comment any key takeaways from this video. Please share this video with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. Also, please share it with someone that you think is an at-risk criminal, that they can learn from this story. There will also be a playlist at the end of this video of all of our other podcast episodes me and Sal done in the past. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to get more videos like this. Also, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon channel, where we offer exclusive content over there. YouTube is sensitive, so we can't put everything on here, and we also want to offer exclusive content over there for people that want to be a part of something exclusive. If you want to buy Sal's autographed book, The Sinatra Club, or the Dinner with the Mobster card, or the Sinatra Club movie ticket, those can all be found in the video description. We also got the Sinatra Club playing cards on there. These cards were played with back in 1972. These cards were played with by John Gotti, Jimmy Burr, Tommy DeSimone, Foxy, and lots of other guys. That can all be found in the video description below. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.